Intermittent fasting can increase your risk of heart attack by 91%. This was a giant headline that we all read across social media and across our newspapers, and it caused many people to be very worried. But should you be worried? Let's take a look at what's happening beyond that headline. Now, first of all, we have to find the source of the information. Now, the source of the information was an abstract from a conference of the American Heart Association in Chicago on the 18th of March. Now, what is an abstract? An abstract is not the full research with all the details. It's actually just a 2-page summary of the completed research that's intended to sort of describe the work that is actually happening, and it doesn't actually give enough details to be able to look through it carefully. So it was a 2-page thing that actually got picked up and splashed across. Secondly, and this is more important, whenever we report on something that has to do with medical science, we look for reports that are peer-reviewed and published. Now, what does this mean? Now, there are medical journals across the world. When someone does research that has to do with health, it has to do with diagnosis, it has to do with the use of medicines or the effect of medicines, it has to be peer-reviewed, which means the research is then submitted to peers in the space who look at it very carefully, poke holes in it, ask questions about it, and only if they think that it's okay and it's adequate does it get published in medical journals. Now, this particular piece of research was neither peer-reviewed nor published in any medical journal. In fact, one nutritionist that GQ has quoted has said that it's just a 1-page script or sheet that describes what they want to do, and it doesn't actually put out the whole data. So even if someone wanted to look in detail at the data of the study, there's no data to look at. Now, having put that down, let's take a look at what the study actually tells us. Now, this 2-page sort of abstract on a study that we haven't fully seen has said basically that people who do intermittent fasting, which means you limit your eating only to an 8-hour window and don't eat for the rest of the time, actually have a 91% increase of dying from cardiovascular disease compared to those people who eat for 12 hours or more. It also suggests that 7.5% of those who ate within that 8-hour window actually died during the course of that study compared to the rest. Now, the data actually doesn't capture other details of what it is these people were eating, whether they were smoking, whether they were consuming alcohol, what kind of eating pattern they were actually doing throughout the day. And this is the reason why there's a problem with that data. Now, let's take a look at the actual data, right? The study looked at 20,000 people in the US with an average age of 49 years, not across the rest of the world. And they actually just asked them questions about what they were eating and the timings of what they were eating. And the study started in 2003 and then stretched out to 2018. So basically what happened in the beginning in 2003, before intermittent fasting was really a thing, these people were just asked in a questionnaire over 2 days, what is their eating time window? And from what we understand, again, 2 weeks later, they were asked again, and they were just tracked after that for the 15-year window that went past since then. Now, during this time, the research says the participants who limited their eating to 8 hours a day actually suffered more cardiovascular disease. But those participants were actually 414 people. So this entire research is based on just 414 Americans in the age bracket of 49 on an average. So it really, cannot be extrapolated to the rest of the world because there are genetic differences, there are racial differences, there are food habit differences also. Plus, it's possible, research says now, that these 414 people were likely to be younger, less educated, have lower income, perhaps have less access to fresh food, more likely to smoke than other participants, and their alcohol intake was not actually measured. So all of these things together could have also contributed to cardiovascular disease, including genetics and family history, and none of this has been captured. The second problem is self-reporting. Now, most researchers say that when you ask people about their food habits, they tend to lie a little bit, they tend to exaggerate, and sometimes they simply forget and they don't really remember. And when someone says, I eat from this period to this period, it might not always be the case. It might be sort of a, 19 20 sort of a thing and not really accurate enough to be able to base research findings on it. One doctor who spoke to New York Times said basically there's a major limitation in this research because it doesn't capture what people ate and whether they smoked or whether they drank, and effectively how likely they were to miss meals, and when they were breaking that fast, if it was a fast at all, what it is they were breaking that fast with. So this is where I'm going to leave you here. The bottom line: every time you read a story that has to do with health, with medical research, with findings, with drugs that have been approved or drugs that are now miracle drugs that can cure everything, read the body copy, find out, and it'll say so in the article, if it has been peer reviewed, if it's been published in a journal, and what the response is of doctors to that particular research, and how wide and deep the research actually is. So medical research needs to be done over decades, but not just based on a questionnaire, but actually tracking people and the various things that contribute to their health. So only when we do all of these things can you actually reach a conclusion. So in this particular case, it was a clickbait headline meant to actually scare you, and it turns out that that's what it did.